Let's welcome Donna Leon to the stage. One moment, I'll put the microphones on. Let's test the one.
I'm happy to hear it, that you're not losing your memory. Mun nimi on siis Mia Halonen ja Donna, this is not your first rodeo in Finland. You've been in Finland before.
Yeah, maybe 4 times for opera and twice for music.
Yes, and you had said that you like coming to Finland.
Yeah, I do. I find it a very pleasant, a very friendly place. You didn't know, you Finns, you didn't know that you were friendly. You are. And I always manage to have fun when I'm here in Helsinki. Also in Turku. But there you get music too, so it's even better.
You can get music in Helsinki too, so that's good. I was so happy to see that this place was full over half an hour ago when I got here, and there were no places to sit here. So you're very popular. And
It's Friday night. You should all be out drinking.
Maybe after this. Yeah. So this year there has been 2 books by you in Finnish. First of all, there is the 31st translated book by you, Hyvän nimissä. In English, it's Give Unto Others. And early next year, there will be the 32nd book in the Commissario Guido Brunetti series. And then there's also your memoirs, Muistoja matkan varrelta. And this is full of fun and interesting stories from your life. I don't think it's a secret to tell that you're 82 years old now, and you've had a unique, such a great life.
I've had a lot of fun.
So you were born in New Jersey, in the States.
Let's talk about something else. We don't want, in this particular historical moment, we don't want to start any type of conversation that might end up in America. Okay? Let's just wait and pray.
Well, your story started in America, but let's leave those first decades there. You started traveling rather early, and you've been all over the world.
I haven't really. I think the difference is that I went to places and I stayed there for a year. So it seems like a lot of traveling, but it's not. It's much less than many people do today, who travel every summer, who go to a different country every summer. They travel in terms of kilometers, far more than I do.
Yeah, you had an academic career, and you were teaching English in various parts of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And which one was the first place you went to? Iran. Iran must have been the first place. And you thought that it's you didn't know much about Iran at that time. This was before the religious revolution there. It was a very different kind of a place, very beautiful.
Mm-hmm. And very, very nice. I answered an ad in the New York Times, which was for teachers interested in life in the Middle East. And there was an address that said teachers wanted for Iran. And I confess that this was in the late 70s. I had no idea where Iran was. I knew it was in the Middle East, but I didn't know which one of those countries it was. So I took the job to go and teach English, thinking, academic, I've taught at the University of Massachusetts and at the University of Indiana, and I'll go on. And so when I got to Iran, it was revealed to me that I was actually going to teach English, but somewhat less sophisticated perhaps than the Shakespeare sonnets, because I was going to teach English, basic English, to training helicopter pilots who were not interested in the Shakespeare sonnets, no matter how hard I tried. And so for the first 3 months of my job, I taught, "Good morning, teacher. How are you today?" "I am fine, thank you." And after about 3 months of this, a friend of mine got me a transfer into a different department of this vast instructional company. And I was given a job in the testing company department, which meant that I was to help with creating the tests that would prove that these guys, after eight weeks of teaching, would be able to say, "Good morning, teacher, how are you?" Which was some question at times. And I was tired of that. So I said to this friend, "Please, could I could I escape teaching and come and work in testing?" He said, "Sure, just come." So I went to, and after a week in testing, he allowed me to invent my own schedule, which became, I arrived at work, even the word work sounds ridiculous. I arrived at work at about 8 o'clock, and at 9, after my boss had come in and taken his place in his job, in his office, I would get up and say, with papers under my arm, "Well, Pat, I'm going over to the main office to check on something. I'll be back later." And I'd disappear. I would go downstairs and change into my tennis whites, put my costume of employee on, and I would go and play tennis for 4 hours or 5 hours. And then I would come back to work, take off the costume, put on my regular clothes, take off my whites, put on my regular clothes, go upstairs with the same papers, everything, and he would look up and say, "Well, how was it? Everything's okay." I did that for more than 3 years. And my tennis was good. And somewhere in the midst of a battlefield near Esfahan, I am sure that there is my Pahlavi Prize, which was a tin cup, because I became the women's singles champion of the city of Esfahan, Iran, in 1971. This is soon to appear in because there were only four women. There were 4 women in this contest, so it really wasn't too hard to emerge victorious from that. And I suppose that spoiled me, because I realized then that one could pretend to have a job and yet have a lot of fun. And it turned out that I had many more jobs than that. But that was the best.
Well, on top of being the women's champion in tennis, that was also that was one of the turning points in history for Middle East. Kind of the start.
My victory or the Islamic Revolution?
Be clear, you'll be the judge of that. Yeah, well, think about it. Like that was probably the first religious revolution in the area. It had looked like it's going to be more and more Western, and then all of a sudden it went back, and also the women's rights took a step back, and which you found out in your not the very next job, but later, Saudi Arabia.
But let me make one comment on the Iran mess. This is another, not that history needs more examples, but this is another example of America's genius in putting its money on the wrong horse. because they put their money on the Shah. When we were evacuated from Iran, when my company paid me when the company paid Pan Am to evacuate us, our company saved us because the American government didn't answer its phone. The phone at both the embassy and the consulate, the embassy in Tehran and the consulate in Esfahan, did not answer their phone during the uprising. And so we, maybe 50, 60, 70, 80 of us, were just left in limbo. And we were taken out by our employer, not by the government. And America persisted in backing the Shah and allowing the Shah to go to America for cancer for treatment, instead of trying to understand what the people of Iran wanted. Because the Americans didn't care what they wanted. They wanted what the Americans wanted. And so I think much of what is going on in Iran today, a country of which I have only the fondest of memories, because I was very well treated, respectfully treated. We brought it on ourselves. We Americans brought it on ourselves by putting the money down on the wrong horse. And your question was?
I'm actually not. Nobody's interested in my questions. We're interested in your thoughts, and it's amazing how we have been in like these places where over your lifetime there has been so many like big events, and you've been in the middle of them, and you have a unique view to the world in Iran before the revolution, for instance.
Unique, but not necessarily correct. But in many cases, people have unique views of situations or events, but that doesn't mean that they're right. And I don't claim to be right about Iran, but I have only my own experience to remember.
Until then, well, you have been working on your doctorate thesis. I think it's so cute that you have been writing your doctorate thesis about Jane Austen.
The changing moral order in the universe of Jane Austen's novels. Wow. That was going to be my doctoral. That was my doctoral dissertation, which was confiscated when I left Iran. So when my things arrived in the United States after a couple of months, I opened up the trunk and there was no rough draft of the dissertation, no notes, no copies of the novels, no nothing. It was all gone. Anything that was written on paper was gone. So I was there. The only thing I had to do to get my doctorate was to write recopy the dissertation. And I had a moment's disillusion. I had a moment's illumination. And I realized that if I decided I will go back to the University of Massachusetts and I will write my dissertation in 6 months, and I will be a PhD, or I could go take a job in China. I had the good sense to take a job in China and just forget the whole academic thing. Stop being an academic. And I think it's one of the wisest decisions I ever made, because I'm not fit. I'm not suited to be an academic, because I can't take anything seriously enough for long enough to make an impression. And I'm sure I had a whole lot more fun than teaching English 101 in Iowa somewhere.
I think it would be very cool if somehow, after all of these years, your dissertation would show up somewhere.
Oh, sorry. Strangely enough, this is something I'm surprised that nobody so far has written to my publisher about, or has tried to contact me about, are the insertions into the Brunetti novels of phrases or passages from English language's greatest hits. There are references to Shakespeare, references to Jane Austen, references to Dickens, all over the place, and no one has yet spotted them. Ha ha.
Guido Brunetti, who is the main character in your series. His wife is surprisingly a university professor. And she is.
Henry.
And I got a feeling that you research, like if there is a, whatever the topic is, you always research it thoroughly, and you like really immerse yourself into finding out everything you can about the topic.
There are a couple of books that come to mind where I spent months doing research. One was about face, the one about the woman who had many facelifts. Luckily, I have two friends who are plastic surgeons, and so I spent a lot of time asking them about facelifts and the consequences on other parts of the body. Another one was the book about diamonds. That was very interesting. I don't even remember its name. Jewels from a Stone. Stones from. I don't remember the name of the book. I don't remember the book. Anyway, the one about diamonds. That caused a lot of pleasure, because I learned a lot about what was going on in Africa then at that time, when the diamonds and the gold were being looted by the people who kept the wars going. And there was one other one I did. The one about meat and slaughterhouses. But it's information.
And probably also about archaeology.
Archaeology, yeah. And painting all the time.
So in your Brunetti books, the main character, he's a very decent man. Mm-hmm. He's a family man. Mm-hmm. And that's something that my 91-year-old mother, who is a big fan of yours, really likes about the books, that he's a good man. He's not one of these troubled police officers with a lot of addictions and other problems.
That, again, was the result of good luck. When I started to write the book, which was in the prehistoric era, in a prehistoric era, I knew that if I wrote a book, I would have to spend time with this person, with the protagonist of the book. How much? 6 months to write a book? I had no idea. And so I thought I would have the luxury of making this detective, this police officer, a normal guy, a kind of person that I would like to share a meal with, go on a walk with, chat with. So he was not an alcoholic. He did not have trouble with his wife and his children or his children. He did not have trouble at work. He did not have lots of enemies. He loved to eat and eat well. He loved to read and read well. And so he was a kind of anti-hero to the endless number of detectives about whom I had read when I read crime fiction, who are all losers, not all, many of whom are losers to one degree or another. I made him a sympathetic person, rather than a sort of propped up failure, as I read about in many crime books that I read when I was in graduate school.
I recently reread your first book, Kuolema Oopperassa. What is it in English? The Death in the La Fenice. And I thought that it was remarkable how ready the character of Guido Brunetti was already in that one. And it wasn't like, okay, so you you had figured out who he was, and he has of course evolved like we all do over the years, but he was a ready character, and his wife and his daughter Chiara and the son Raffaele, and that was interesting. So how much did you have to spend time creating the character?
No, once I knew that he was going to be a nice guy, I just gave him those qualities that appealed to me. The easiness of conversation, his love of reading, Whenever he can, he reads, and he reads serious. He reads real books. His wife, I thought, I chose to give her professorship because I knew I could make jokes about that later in the book. But the luckiest thing I did was to make her upper class, to make her the daughter of a count, Comte Falier, and to give Brunetti thus a way into circuits in Venice where he ordinarily would not be allowed to enter. He would not be invited to these houses, but backed by the authority of the state, in his being a police officer, he can enter anywhere. But once he has the okay of the Conte, and once people remember that he's married to who he is married to, then he can get into the places and people will talk to him. Because any of you who live in anywhere know that there's a ladder that people climb up and down, usually trying to get up and sometimes falling down, of social acceptance. And this way, I outsmarted the bad guys because he could get information from the rich and the well-known and the famous, which an ordinary policeman couldn't get because the wall of silence would come down. That was probably and the other clever thing I did, which was for no real choice or reason, was invent Signorina Elettra, because now he can get in anywhere physically or theoretically or in terms of the system, because she's a computer hacker and computer genius. He can barely turn his on and off, but she can get him in anywhere to get any piece of information. And I haven't a clue of how she does that. I can turn mine on and turn it off.
She's a wonderful character. I love how you describe what she's wearing. She's so elegant and so resourceful and well connected. So also, it's kind of like a character in the books that the city where the books are set, Venice, and you also play with the fact that some people use Italian, or standard Italian, and some people use the local Venetian language, or dialect. I don't know which one it is, but that is also like it's a big difference there.
The people who speak it will call it a language, and the other Venetians call it a dialect. But Goldoni wrote in Veneziano, and that's not casual junk. That's serious. Goldoni is a very, very capable and at times wonderful writer, and it's all in Veneziano, translated into Venetian. The Venetians are, as those of you who go there, those of you who have friends there know, are very proud of their lineage. They're very proud of being Venetian, not Italian. Because I think most of them see themselves as Venetian rather than Italian. Understandably.
Many of us have visited Venice. You lived there for a long time, and you know the city so well. And it is essentially a small town, and people are very connected in various ways to each other.
This is a mercy for me, because I know a lot of people, but I don't know everyone. But I know enough people to contact. If I have to get there, I know that I can get there from going here. If I call her, I can get information about him, but I can't get information from him. But after what he did to her, woo! And this is, I think, because my entry into the city and to the culture was in the late 60s, where I met a Venetian couple and became a good friend. They are still my best friends in Venice. And we've known one another for 50 years, and I've known her friends for 50 years. So I have some ability to see things as a Venetian would. Not entirely, and I don't claim to have that. But I know who to call to get there.
You have moved away from Venice, and a big part was because there are just millions and millions of tourists there.
There's a pharmacy at the bottom of the Rialto Bridge in Campo San Bartolo, and it gives the number of the number of people who are listed as residente in the city, who live in the city legally. It is now Moretti. The number is tied to the office of the Anagrafe, which authorizes a person to be a resident of the city. And every time I go to Venice now, there are fewer and fewer Venetians. It's way below 50,000. So this is a city of fewer than 50,000 residents that has 30 million tourists a year. You don't like the numbers, do you? But I find it astonishing that and Venice is not a big place. 30 million, that's what they admit to. I have one piece of advice to give to you. Don't believe all of that talk about the ticket to get into Venice, the €5 ticket or the €10 ticket to get into Venice. You write in advance, you get it, it comes in the mail, efficient, the courier will bring it to your house. Because, according to me, with my vicious mind, they do not want to limit the number of tourists coming to the city. Because, or let me put it this way. I'll just describe two actions. One is you say we are going to limit the number of tourists in this city by selling these passes. Right? And then over here, you have the same people giving out licenses to bed and breakfasts and licenses to restore 18th century, 17th century, 16th century palazzi so they can be mega hotels. Now, I am perfectly willing to accept either of these statements, that you want to create places for people to come and stay in Venice, that you don't want people to come to Venice. Anyone who's studied logic can figure out they can't both be true, can they? Because they keep giving out these permissions to restore a palazzo. I don't live there anymore, but I go often.
And hopefully you are planning to write many more Guido Brunetti stories set in Venice or somewhere else?
I couldn't write about it anywhere else because I don't know anywhere else. I would say stupid things about else.
So there will be the 32nd book translated in Finnish coming out next year, and you're writing.
This is the 33rd.
This is
33rd, and I'm working on the 34th. I have maybe a third of it done.
And then when we have read them all, we can start over and discover new connections there. Oh, this is the same character as later.
Excuse me, as those of us, and I ask you to raise your hands. Who else in this room is a Patrick O'Brien lunatic? No. Only we two? I don't know if you have been Patrick O'Brien. Does this mean that all of you people haven't read Patrick O'Brien? Shame on you. These are, all right, when you were kids, did you read Horatio Hornblower? Ah, okay. right? He fought in the British Navy under Admiral Nelson. The same with Patrick O'Brien. He has, I think, 30, I don't know, maybe 29, 28 books set in the combat between the wicked French and the English in the 19th century. The 17th and the 18th, no, let's get that wrong. The 18th and the 19th century. There are maybe 21 of them. They are glorious. They are the perfect holiday reading. And you don't have to read them in order. He's a brilliant writer. Patrick O'Brien, write it down.
Maybe they have to make
They want their store back.
No, I mean that they will have to order those books here because now they're all going to
You mean you're not selling Patrick O'Brien and I came here?
I have to say that I don't know. I don't know if any of our salespeople knows.
No, wait, I'm sitting down. He is translated into Finnish, isn't he?
I have no idea, but we'll find out. And I can see you're shocked, but yeah, there are some writers that have not been translated to Finnish. But luckily, your books have been and will be, and we're so grateful for that. And I think we have time for a couple of questions. If somebody has a question to ask, you can ask it in Finnish, and I can translate that.
Ask the first.
Niin, jos jollain on joku kysymys, voitte kysyä sen suomeksi, ja mä voin kääntää sen Donna Leonille, ja sen jälkeen päästään hänet sitten signeeraamaan. Siellä on kysymys.
Täällä on myös yksi kysymys.
So Italy is such a gorgeous country. Why Venice?
Okay. Because it's been shockingly beautiful for the last 600 years. I think that's what I would say. It's the most beautiful. It's one of the most beautiful cities in the world. Because everything you see is beautiful, and there are very few cities which can claim that.
Siellä on vielä yksi kysymys.
Hello, very nice to see you. Thank you for coming here. Now that you live in Switzerland, how much do you miss the Italian way of living?
How much do I
Miss the Italian way of living?
I miss it all the time. Yeah. But I don't want to live in Italy. I don't have a strong lust to live in Italy. I would like to be able to live in Venice. But it is very, very difficult to live in a city where there are 33 million tourists a year. Because there are times when it is impossible to go down to the corner bar and have a cup of coffee. Impossible. And I can choose whether I do or I don't live there. And I've chosen for the moment not to live there. I would like something to happen that I could move back. Because it's paradise. In every sense, it's paradise. And it's also paradise because the entire city administration is under investigation by the police.
That's also in your books. You're always describing how people seem to have like some sort of a map of Venice in their heads, and they know the shortcuts and they know the fastest routes from one place to another. So that's really interesting too.
I know who the good guys are and who the bad guys are.
Okay, so Donna Leon hyvän nimissä, uusin Donna Leonin Guido Brunetti-dekkari ilmestynyt, ja sitten Donna Leonin muistoja matkan varrelta. Erittäin hauska myöskin tämä muistelmateos, niin nämä on nyt täällä ja näitä voi saada sitten signeerattuina Donna Leonin käsialalla tässä sitten seuraavaksi. Thank you so much for visiting Finland, for coming over here, and you will also be at the Helsinki Book Fair, Helsingin kirjamessut, tomorrow.
two interviews there. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for coming.